Hello and welcome. You're listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us for another segment. We're going to be speaking with Dr. Steve Romano. He's Executive Vice President and Chief Scientific Officer at Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals. He's joining us to talk about the results of their Phase 3 trials for StrataGraft. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Dr. Steve Romano. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Now, Executive Vice President, Chief Scientific Officer there at Mallinckrodt, give us a bit of your professional background. Tell us what it is that you love about what you do, and then let's jump right into StrataGraft, what it is and how it works, okay?
Sure, yes. So I'm the Chief Science Officer at Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals. We're a company that develops innovative products, in particular in the area of critical care, burns being one of them. I've been in the industry for about 25 years, largely in the development of pharmaceuticals and other therapeutics, as well as in medical and supporting our commercial colleagues in the field.
This Phase 3 trial for StrataGraft, exactly what is StrataGraft? Who does it benefit? How does it work?
Sure. So StrataGraft is a biological drug product, and it's just been approved by the U.S. FDA, as you mentioned, for the treatment of patients with certain types of thermal burns, what we refer to as deep partial thickness burns. Now, these are a type of burn that often requires surgical intervention, and that's done often in the form of an autograft. So StrataGraft is very interesting. It looks and feels like human skin. And it's constructed and produced from two kinds of human skins. One is a special line of keratinocytes, and keratinocytes is a primary type of skin cell on the outer layer of the skin, but also dermal fibroblasts, and these are found in the deeper layers of the skin. And when they're grown together, they produce a bilayer construct that's very similar to normal human skin. Now, the way it works is interesting as well. StrataGraft is a type of therapy that we refer to as regenerative. This means that StrataGraft contains metabolically active, viable cells. And these cells produce and secrete all of which are known to be involved in wound healing. But unlike a graft, it doesn't ingraft or grow into the wound, but instead helps the burn victim regenerate their own skin. So it's a very interesting product.
What about rejection? I've heard of skin grafts being rejected. Does StrataGraft eliminate that possibility?
So we're in the case of StrataGraft, you're actually using the product instead of autografting. Oh. So you don't anticipate the use of autografting or skin that's taken from a healthy part of the patient's body. So you don't have an issue with that, with rejection. What you do have is the product itself inducing the patient's own healthy response to healing. And that actually provides the genesis of new skin. So you actually can actually remove the need for autografting, or at least substantially reduce the need for autografting.
Is it only beneficial to patients with that particular type of burn?
So right now, we've only studied it in patients with deep partial thickness burns. There are other types of burns, other types of thermal burns, including full thickness burns. And that is an area that we're very interested in exploring. And in fact, we're about to begin a study to look at how StrataGraft might be used in patients with full thickness burns. And that's important because many times patients will have varying degrees of depth of their burn. So some areas might be deep partial thickness, some might be referred to as full thickness. And we'd like to study the product in areas that would be useful, including full thickness.
When it comes to scarring, because it's not skin taken from a healthy part of the body, will there be the same type of look as far as scarring when the healing process is complete?
So one of the endpoints of the study was looking at patients who were autografted and comparing their autografts to those areas of their skin where StrataGraft was used. And we followed these patients out for 12 months. What you're referring to, Neil, is cosmesis, the appearance of the wound. Now, we don't have enough patients to make a definitive declaration, but the bottom line is it looks as though the patient's healing is very, very similar whether they've been treated with an autograft or whether they've been treated with StrataGraft. So that's a very important point to patients with burns, how that burn looks over time.
What is significant about the FDA's approval of StrataGraft in June?
So there are a number of things that are significant about that. First of all, if you think back over the last few decades, there have been very few advances in the treatment of severe burns. Now, we've seen patients do better because of general care that has been enhanced in the management of these patients, but we haven't seen any really breakthrough therapies. The recent approval makes a very significant milestone for the burn community because burn surgeons now have an option when they need to autograft or they consider autografting the means for treating these patients. They have an option in StrataGraft that would help eliminate, if not reduce, the need for autografting. So that's very exciting. And what's interesting, Neil, is it feels like real skin. StrataGraft feels like real skin. So when the burn surgeon uses it, he or she is very familiar with the texture, how they would apply it in very similar manner as they would with an autograft. They can staple it, they can suture it, they can glue it, but it fits very nicely into their practice because of some of those familiar features of the product.
When it comes to after application care, are there significant differences in the care during the healing process as compared to autograft?
No, generally speaking, the process of managing these patients is very similar. There are some differences in the appearance of the wound early on, but over time, actually, whether it's StrataGraft or whether there was an autograft that was applied, actually the management of those patients is the same. The patients that were included in the study were over 18, so they could be any age over 18. There were 71 study participants in the trial. And if you look at those patients, they had burns covering anywhere from a minimum of 3% of their total body surface up to nearly 40% of their body surface. This trial, by the way, was a single pivotal trial that was an open-label, controlled, randomized, multi-center phase 3 program that was done here in the United States at U.S. burn centers.
So as far as the future of StrataGraft, what do you anticipate now that it's got FDA approval?
Well, I think we're preparing to expand the evidence basis for the use of the product. So certainly we're preparing to initiate a number of additional studies. And they include looking and designing a program with the input from the FDA to evaluate the use of StrataGraft in pediatric patients. As I mentioned, patients in the pivotal study were 18 years and older. So we don't have experience with younger patients, and we don't have that labeled indication. So we would like to do a pivotal trial in those patients. We're also looking to begin a trial to explore the potential use of StrataGraft beyond deep partial thickness to include full thickness burns. And in fact, we are just at the precipice of initiating that trial this year. And hopefully we'll be able to explore the best utility or use of StrataGraft in that patient population as well.
Is there anything that you'd like to add? And would you give us a website where our listeners can learn more about Mallinckrodt and about StrataGraft as well?
Yes, so we at Mallinckrodt, first of all, are very excited to introduce this new and innovative therapy for the treatment of deep partial thickness burns. One of the most valuable opportunities here is to reduce the need for autografting. Autografting in burns can be very painful. Remember, you're going to remove healthy skin from a patient with burns in order to cover that particular area of their wound and manage the wound. But you have to create another surgically induced wound through autografting. And there are complications of that. Patients can have infection, itch, pruritus, pain on healing. So we want to be able to reduce that. So we're very excited about the opportunity of bringing a product forward that will give burn surgeons the opportunity to manage these patients while hopefully eliminating or reducing the need for painful autografting.
And a website where we can learn more.
The website where you can learn more is www.stratagraft.com.
Well, Steve, I appreciate you joining us here on Health Professional Radio. Lots of great information, and I'm hoping that we'll speak again as StrataGraft improves and propels through the medical community.
Thank you so much, Neil.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Dr. Steve Romano, Executive Vice President and Chief Scientific Officer at Mallinckrodt. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download it, SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.